Tomorrow morning, Waterbury's police chief will testify during a Senate Judiciary Committee talking about gun violence. He's expected to share his experiences on what's worked here in the Brass City.
Thoughts and prayers will not solve this problem. We need action, and we need support from the folks on the ground doing law enforcement.
Senator Richard Blumenthal set to chair a Senate subcommittee that will look into measures to reduce gun violence across the nation. Hearings for that committee set to start tomorrow. He's invited Waterbury's police chief Fernando Spagnolo to testify at the hearings because he says Waterbury has something they can share with the nation.
They're taking guns out of neighborhoods from people who are dangerous, and guns that are crime guns. They know how to deal with this problem, and they can offer some advice to us as members of the Senate and also to the country about strong and effective common sense steps to stop gun violence.
Chief Spagnolo plans to share how measures like background checks are working here in Connecticut.
I support all these things, and I think that these are common sense solutions that should be adopted nationwide. I think that would help us in Connecticut with the amount of weapons that come into this state illegally and end up in the hands of prohibited persons. And when those guns end up in the hands of prohibited persons, my biggest fear is the men and women that work for me have to face these people each and every day. And more importantly, they make our community much less safer.
But Waterbury has had its share of gun violence despite some of these measures. Chief Spagnolo says more emphasis on community-based programs could help further reduce violence.
These are programs that come from the federal level through the U.S. Attorney's Office. Project Safe Neighborhood is one of the programs. Project Longevity is another program that really focuses on people re-entering into our community and focuses on steering them away from the opportunity for recidivism and having them understand there's better choices out there.
These hearings are scheduled to start tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Chief Spagnolo will speak virtually. Senator Blumenthal is hopeful legislation on universal background checks and emergency risk protection orders will be created in this committee. In Waterbury, Ashley Afonso, Fox 61 News.